Hey, hey, hey. This is Dr. Francis from Love and Marriage Huntsville, aka Dr. Kit. I'm moving. What am I doing? I'm shaking up. So I just want to welcome you to the Shake Up with Dr. Kit. Listen, we're back. Things are going well. These shows are going well. We got people following, and man, that's a good thing because we got some good message for everybody out there. Some really, really good messages. Okay. So just hang in there with me. And what I'd like for you to do is to like the show, follow, share, subscribe. You know what I like? Follow, share, subscribe, like, follow, share, subscribe. Got to make it so you think I'm crazy, and I really am, okay? So don't worry about it. But the information we share will not be crazy. I can guarantee you that. So just like it, follow, share, and subscribe. And we're on every Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And let me tell you this, if you would like to be a part of this show, exciting show, okay, I'd like you to just email my team at drkitspeaks@gmail.com. drkitspeaks@gmail.com, and they will get you on this show. Now, let me tell you something about this. This is not where we air out a whole lot of dirty stuff. That's not what it's about. This is some real serious issues about the complexities of human interpersonal relationships. Now, when you come on the show, you can be on camera or you can be off camera for your own identity purposes, okay? So we just want you to come, feel free, feel good. It's all very, very, very relaxing. There's nobody's going to look bad. If anybody's going to look bad, it's going to be me, and I am not here to look bad. So we're going to get on with this thing. Okay, listen, enough is enough. Welcome to the Shake Up with Dr. Kit, aka Dr. Kit. I'm Dr. Francis from Love and Marriage Huntsville. All right, today I got a really good show for you. And I have a special guest. And she's doing something that is so important, and it can be very troubling to some people. So we want you to just hang in here with us tonight. And I'm going to bring her on like right now. And she is going to introduce herself, and she's going to tell you about herself, and she's going to tell you all the stuff that you need to know. And then she got some trick questions for me. So if I don't answer the questions, it's because she had trick questions, because I don't know what she's going to say. But anyhow, we're going to have a great time. Listen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Thank you, Dr. Kit.
Okay. Let you see, you're smiling now. You don't know if you're going to be smiling just a little bit.
Right.
You don't know. Listen, you're going to be smiling all the way through. Listen, I really want to thank you for being on here tonight, okay? I know you're a very busy lady. You got a whole lot of things to do. You could be in a whole lot of other places, but you're here with me. So I'm the fortunate one, and I want to welcome you to the show. Now, listen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, just tell the people whatever you want them to know, and then we're going to go and just kick the ball and just get moving, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dr. Kit. I'm really happy to be here in the space with you, having this conversation. So my name is Juliet Wise. I am a sexual trauma and intimacy therapist. I am in private practice in the owner of Journey to New Beginnings Counseling Services. I specifically work with women 18 and over on issues related to sex assault and trauma and intimacy issues. So the goal of my practice is to help them to find freedom through their journey of healing through sexual trauma and abuse. And that freedom comes in the space of, after healing through that trauma, understanding the effects that it's had on their bodies, their minds, their relationships, and intimate connections, then being able to connect intimately in their relationships, whether that's romantically, sexually, parental, in their careers, because our trauma impacts every component of our lives. So that's what I do. That's my passion. It is working with women and seeing them find freedom after experiencing abuse.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh man, that's a whole lot of stuff that you do with people. But the key thing about it is, it's all very, very important and necessary, because you're right. You said it, that people have trauma. We go through trauma. It's almost like trauma is a part of our everyday life expectations. And sometimes it catches unawares, and sometimes it is so gut-wrenching that it almost cripples us, or we freeze. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So yeah. So there's I guess one of the things that I'd like to know is, everybody want to know why people get into things. Now you can tell us as much as you want to. What brought you into this, because it is a very important area of study and practice that a lot of people just can't handle going through this stuff. So can you tell us what kind of just brought you into this, what evoked your passion to do this?
Well, although I'm a therapist, I'm also a survivor of trauma, sexual trauma to be exact, and many complex trauma, but that brought me into sexual trauma and assault. And what really has brought me to this space, I went into social work originally. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And originally I went into social work thinking that I would want to open a group home for pregnant teens. Reason for that was because as a teen, I had a friend who became pregnant as a teen, and I recognized that she did not have resources, and I wanted to be able to provide something for people who experience that situation, because I felt like she needed more support. And so as time went on and I worked in group homes, I realized I didn't necessarily want to open a group home, but all through college, I would write papers on sex assault in our religious systems and why it is not addressed in the ways that I felt it should be addressed. And so it's been a passion of mine. I said, well, eventually I'm gonna get my doctorate degree and I'm gonna do a dissertation on what the problem is in the space of religious systems and addressing trauma in an effective way where people feel protected. And so I may be going back and forth, but as I went into social work, I said that, so I don't want to be a typical social worker. I desire my freedom. I desire to live a life that allows me to be myself. And so I said, well, what is the highest level I can achieve, or what is the greatest thing I can achieve in the space of social work? And be able to have this freedom that I desire, right? So that's when I decided, I'm going to go through the social work program. I'm going to get my license in clinical practice, and I'm going to go into private practice, and I'm going to help women heal from sexual trauma. I also wanted to be a sex therapist because I believe intimacy is important. So then as I was working through the space of teaching women, and I started realizing how much intimacy is impacted by trauma, because our bodies respond in such profound ways from trauma, and oftentimes it's not understood why we can't connect and why there's so much trouble in the relationship. I said, wow, I want to bridge these two together so that I can teach women how to connect. It's funny because I've learned, last month was Sex Assault Awareness Month, and I did a lot of different things during the month, and I had a lot of men saying, well, why don't you provide services for men? And that's not necessarily my passion. It's not that it's not my passion, because I realize the need. And so I don't know, maybe God will say something along the path. But the beginning path was for me because I could identify in a different way with the women. And I can see them when they're coming into my office. I can understand their stories in a different way. And so I hope I answered your question, but that's kind of
listen. Listen, just talk to your heart's content. How about that? Okay. Listen, and that's okay. You know why? Because right now, this is a once in a lifetime thing. Right now, we hope to get you back again, but just tell us, because this is some great stuff here. You answer the question, but sexual abuse. It's, in my mind, it's robbing somebody of their freedom to express themselves without being locked away in the mindset and behavior of somebody else.
Yes.
What do you think people go through in terms of the loss of their freedom to be self-expressive in their own way, their own time, in their own place? But somebody else will come in and rob them of that. What happens to people when they have to go through that? What do you think?
Yeah. I think there's different levels of things, when you're dealing with the levels of sex assault, when you're dealing with child sexual abuse, there's so much confusion that a child experiences, because oftentimes children are abused by an intimate person, like intimate partner abuse, but they're abused by someone that was close to them, most likely someone in power, to them especially, because everybody's in power that's an adult, right?
Right.
And so there's so much confusion because it's not. I think people often confuse sexual abuse with it being ravaging and someone was beating them, and it's not. And so it confuses that intimate space in such a horrible way, because when someone touches your body and it responds, you're trying to figure out why my body is doing this at this early age. And then you're older and you're trying to figure out who adults are and if anybody is really safe. And why would someone come into my space like that? So for children, it impacts that intimate space from an early age. And it's really sad, because that's some of the things that I've worked through in my own journey, is understanding what was difficult for me and understanding that men were safe and that not all adult men, and going back to the religious system, especially someone in a religious system, would see me in that light, right? And so it really impacts that intimate space in a way that's so confusing. And it's teaching that your body is supposed to respond the way it responded, but someone took that at an early age when your body was not ready or prepared to understand that form of touch. And that healing, I do EMDR therapy also, that healing the body, how the body keeps score, that healing that comes in the body keeping score, and understanding that your body is to respond. Your body was made to respond. God made your body to respond. But it was not supposed to respond in that way. So we want to desensitize that. We want to shift the memories associated with that trauma that came, and then install understanding, adaptive processing that says it is healthy to connect with people intimately and physically. It is healthy to understand that you can trust people, and then not all people are going to hurt you. So that's the child space. In the adult space, when someone experiences, whether it's intimate violence or abuse within a relationship or marriage, or it's a rape that is vicious, those spaces are difficult too, right? Because in that space, you're having difficulty. Now there's anger, and I want revenge. And so that impacts your intimate relationship, because that could show up in ways in your intimate relationship where you can't connect because you want power, right? And so you also want relationship, and that's just one example, but you want also power. You want someone to know that I'm in control and you can't take anything from me again. And so then that can impact where you're trying to connect intimately if you don't work through it, because you don't realize that this is impacted by my trauma, that I'm having a difficult time letting go and trusting that this person is not going to harm me, and I don't have to stay in control all the time.
Right. Listen. Oh man, we're going to get to the religious part in just a second, but listen. I've worked a lot of the females that I worked with, and some males too. Early sexual traumas in their lifestyle, in their lives, I should say. And one of the things that we talk about, or they raise sometimes, is this word called confusion. They are confused about a number of things. What did I do to create this? I'm confused because, like you said, why are people that I trust doing this to me? What am I supposed to do now? Like you said, with all these feelings that I'm having here right now, can you talk some about this confusion that they go through, especially young children who just want to be able to trust people, and now they got to deal with this trust issue, issue of trust. Can you talk about that confusion that they might go through?
The confusion is really the saddest part. It's because there's a lot of blame. Like maybe it is my fault. Maybe because my body responded and I didn't really know how to move myself. I didn't know it was bad or good. That maybe I did something. Right. For example, with me, I was born in a single parent home. And the abuser that my abuser was a deacon in the church, right? And so I would see him playing, and I would be like, oh, dang, I wish I had a male figure in my life. And I remember this as a little kid, because, you know, trauma, you remember synapses, right? Pieces. And I would look and I would see this. And so many years I felt like maybe it was my fault because I desired so much to have a father figure or a male to throw me around like a kid and all these different things. And so I was very confused. Like, maybe I did this, maybe because I desired attention at 7 or 8 years old, that it was my fault, you know? And so that confusion, what you do in that space of confusion is being able to, as adults, when we get into that therapy, is start tapping into that inner child and saying, hey, what would you have known at 7 years old? Where would your brain have developed and understood a lack of safety and safety? What would you understand about that? And it's almost like, so with trauma, you know, we could be so disassociated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so detached that we can't connect to the child. So often what I do is I have my clients get a picture of their child that age when they were abused. And I say, look at her. What do you think she knew at that time? What do you think she understood? What do you think she needed? Right? And then I said, now let's go back to her and say, but what do I have now? Can you protect yourself now? You may not believe it, but if you look at your physical body, do you have the ability to protect a child? And so then as we walk through that journey, I say, okay, so let's keep her next to you at the side of your bed daily and look at her. And let's talk to her and let's start walking with her and keeping her in the journey with us and teaching her that you were a child. You had an adult who preyed on your vulnerability, on your innocence, a sick person. And there was nothing you could do. And it is not abnormal that you're confused.
Right.
Because your child would be confused.
Right.
What would a kid know?
Right.
You know, right. And so that's what I work to help. I do a lot of inner child work so that we can really connect, because with the detachment being so large, it's being able to say, okay, look at some kids walking around so that you could try to feel the emotion of what it means to be a child. Because when you're abused so early, you never really got an opportunity to understand the innocence of being a child. So go and look at them so we can kind of figure out what it means to be a child. You know, and so that's really what I do the work of doing, trying to help us remember or not remember, but get an understanding of childlike behavior and saying, okay, well, they look like they're playing. They look like they're coloring. They look like they're laughing. I may not remember that experience, but what do I want to do for that child that I see in the picture?
Okay, so there's this thing called guilt that can come up in the, you have adults talking about, well, I felt guilty that I didn't want to tell on this person. One of the questions I asked was, was it reported? And a lot of people say no, because of the quality of the relationship that they had with this person. And very often, you're absolutely right, they're very close family members and so on and so forth. But here is a key question. Can you talk? You did say, and they can get back to that if you want to, but can you talked about you do a lot of work with the inner child. I'm sure that there are some people out there who want to know what that inner child work might look like, because you might even be able to tell them how they can begin to tap into that inner child. It's that sacred sanctum, that peace that no one should venture to go into. It is a door that the handle is on the inside. Only the person on the inside, can open that door. That when you force your way in, you have invaded my space. I couldn't help myself. It's all of these things. So how do you get them to say, listen, I was so young, I couldn't protect myself. I can't even trust myself. So how do you get them past that by working through the inner child?
Mm-hmm. It's first teaching them that the inner child is there.
Okay.
Right. So I first try to help them understand what, like you were expressing, what the inner child is, right? And I try to help them to understand that by identifying those emotions that, you know, how vulnerability is a huge emotion that we're afraid of. And I try to help them to identify those spaces in the story, in the narrative, that were so sensitive that they're afraid of. And so then when they, you know, sometimes we'll say statements like, oh, I'm just being childish, or, oh, that's so stupid, or I can't believe I did that. And so when those statements come up, I try to say, okay, well, what makes you feel it wasn't okay to do that? And so then when we go into that conversation a little bit more, then I'm able to help them to understand we're trying to be an adult, but you're functioning at the developmental level of a child. Because when you are abused, our trauma pauses us in that space, our intimate connections. So for instance, my abuse, if I'm abused at 8 years old, 7 years old, I don't know, in that range between 7 and 9, we forget age specifically, but your developmental stage is paused at that 7-year-old age. So if you think about your ability to articulate and to communicate language, communicate needs, to understand your environment, and if there are all kind of things going on in your environment already, you're surviving, you've got all kind of things happening, then what would a 7-year-old, what would it look like, the life of a 7-year-old? So that's kind of how I have them connect to their inner child, is I have them go back and talk about the time as a kid, if we can remember, because trauma causes us to forget at times, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I get a picture and I say, well, do you have a picture? Let's look at that picture and say, oh, who was that? Do you know who that was? Do you remember any memories associated with that kid on the picture? Because sometimes we don't even feel like that person is connected to us. And then I say, okay, well, look at them, because that's the person sitting in here. That little girl you see on the picture is right here in your heart. And you're functioning out of the space of her when you're trying to be in a relationship. So you're mad at yourself because you can't communicate and you can't connect. But that 7-year-old is the one trying to communicate in this adult body. So if we could acknowledge that that 7-year-old is trying to do that, then we can go back and say, okay, well, what kind of language, what kind of communication does she need? Does she need you to say, hey, my name was Tanya as a kid? That's still my name. My family called me. Does she need you? Does she need you to say, Tanya, I'm here. I'm sorry this happened to you? Does she need you to say, it's not your fault? Does she need you to say, they're wrong? Right? And so then when we start talking to her, even though it's like an outside observer situation and people can feel like it's a crazy situation, but you're getting connected with her, because little by little, you're talking to her and bringing her to you. And you're saying, hey, now let me hold your hand. Trust me, because it's me. I'm the bigger you. You may not trust anybody else out here in this world.
Wow.
Right? But I am the bigger you. So can you let me hold your hand? Can you let me teach you a little bit? Right? And so that's kind of how I work the space of the inner child.
Wow. Wow. You know, I did that with that photograph one time with a little girl.
Yeah.
And it took her about a month for her to agree to find a picture, because every time she thought about the picture, she would freeze, she said. You know, and so it took her a long, and then she had to touch the picture, and she had to agree to let me see the picture, because now it's becoming conscious. I'm going to be having her in this conscious moment where she can't run away from this. And one of the things you said this, they said, listen, my name is Tanya. They call me that all the time. You know what she wanted to do? She wanted to change her name, and she went ahead and changed her name so that she would not have to talk about that little girl, that fragile little girl who was hurt at that time by an older man. And so that was a way for her to kind of disassociate herself so that she didn't have to deal with the pain of the past. You know, is that something that some people would do, or was that just an anomaly with one person? You think people would go through stuff like that?
I do, because I think it's I'm glad you brought up that part, to the hard part about looking at the picture.
Yeah.
because I felt that. I pay attention a lot to my body because of the EMDR therapy I do, and it's paying a lot to how your body feels, right? And you see that picture, and if you don't remember, your body does, and it's like, boom, charged, light up, right? And so I do think that, I don't think that's an anomaly at all, because sometimes that trauma is so disruptive that you want no relationship with that person.
Yes.
You know, and that's the hard part. That's the hard part, is wanting to shift all the way to another name, another identity, because of feeling like that identity, nothing can be done with it. You know, I think that's oftentimes what happens, is that people lose so much hope.
Right.
In thinking that.
But isn't that to some degree like the person rejecting the self, the reality of the self, and that rejection, in order not to have to deal with the consciousness again, they stay fixated, arrested at that position. You know, what one author said that you know, and they were talking about the difference, say borderline personality and you know, and a narcissist. They were saying, look, the earlier the person is traumatized and they're fixated, they have this emotional arrest, and then then physiologically and sociologically they keep on growing. So you see this 25, 35, 45, 50-year-old person acting like they're 7.
Yep.
What do you tell? How do we? But that some people who don't understand, like you understand, they may say that person is being so childish, but they don't understand the responsiveness that they're having at that moment because of the trauma, and you know, and how some people may become reclusive and all that. How do we get people to understand that they're not just being childish because they're 25, 35, or 40? You know, they moved on physiologically, intellectually, but that's not where the trauma happened. The trauma happened, you know, in the soul of the person. Can you get you know, how do you get your clients and or family members are sometimes in a hurry for them to grow up. And it's not a matter of growing up. It's a matter of walking through that experience that they're having. What do you do with that?
Yeah, that's a huge thing, especially in the dynamics of relationships, you know, is that the partners oftentimes don't understand the behaviors that keep showing up because they're being hurt by them ultimately. You know, they're being hurt, they're being rejected, they're experiencing results of their partner's trauma, right? And so what I often do is encourage my client, whoever their partner is, to also be in therapy.
Okay.
Because to deal with their partner's journey, because it is very difficult and it's very painful, you know, because we can show up very detached and emotionally up and down, and especially if you haven't been getting your help, you know. And so then when you're getting into your therapy and you're getting your work and you're working through things and you're able to show up in a better way, but the partner or the family member needs assistance too, because they're being human and saying, why is this process taking so long? I'm tired of this. They're standing in their humanity too. And so it's them having support too, so that they have some education on the trauma process and they're understanding that this person is not working out of the space of what you see in front of them. They're working out of the space of their trauma. And does that mean that we have to just say, okay, I'm going to enable them and forever say, oh, they're working out of space of their trauma? No, that's not true either, because it doesn't say I get to treat you bad or you have to suffer as a result of this. But it says that in the space of them walking through their journey, that some things may show up in this way as a result. And you are able to be a part of that journey if you're able to get your work, so that when you're triggered, because possibly you have your own trauma, it doesn't have to be sexual trauma, but some form of trauma, when you're triggered by their behavior, you may show up in a way that disrupts them more or disrupts yourself.
Right.
And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Okay. Listen. So one of the things that we I know we talked to some about the child who was victimized, but what about, is it possible for some parents, especially a mother, to feel guilty because she wasn't there, or she'd been trusting this person and didn't think the person would do that? I mean, what happens to parents, because they are inseparably bound to that child, and it's almost like that, like the parent is saying, but this is my smaller me that lives outside of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't there, or I could have had some better optics to see, but what, and some parents may be dealing with that kind of a guilt. What can you tell parents to help them through that, so they don't freeze and start becoming, say, even overprotective with other children or grandchildren, because then it kind of holds them in, and they're not free to become explorative. You understand what I'm saying? And in an appropriate way. What can you tell parents, to say, hey, listen, whatever you want to tell them, that may not, it's maybe not your fault, or whatever they might think. What do you think about that?
I think that with parents, that's really complex. I think that, because you're right, there's so many emotions a parent can take. I think that oftentimes some parents are there's different responses from parents. Some parents respond in assertive ways, and they protect immediately. Some parents don't. Some parents, because of their own trauma, fall back and are passive, right?
Yeah.
And so that can be re-traumatizing, you know.
Right.
And so I think that there's a message for two parents. And then, like you said, there's some parents who become overprotective because they're afraid, because they've seen trauma and different things. And so they're hyper vigilant, and that could be traumatic too, right? And so it's understanding one, and I'm a proponent of people just getting their work. Just because you're going to therapy doesn't mean you have a problem. But if you're hyper vigilant and you're scared, you want to deal with that anxiety, because you want to be able to show up in a balanced way, because you don't want to provide an environment that causes your children to be scared of people. You want them to understand that there are healthy people and there are unhealthy people in the world. And these are the things that I want to teach you in order to understand how to function in the space of this crazy world, right? Then you talked about the guilt. I think that for parents who are experiencing that guilt, that's a hard one. It's being able to work through where that guilt is coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the guilt associated with? Is especially when we're talking about a child, if it is your child that's been abused, right? It's being able to say, what happened if I feel I wasn't able to show up? What happened to where I wasn't, right? And have I apologized? Because the thing is, oftentimes parents make it about themselves. Well, I didn't mean to. I was going through stuff. That doesn't matter to the child who was abused. And so oftentimes I tell my clients, and this is a hard one for them, is that your responsibility is not to heal your parents' trauma, not to heal your parents' trauma that impacted how you experience trauma. Your responsibility is to work through what you're experiencing. Because oftentimes we take on them, well, she didn't mean to, or he didn't mean to, they were trying to do their best, and that takes away from my healing process. She could have been doing her best. He could have been doing their best, but I still was hurt in the process. And so I've got to heal from that. And so what I tell parents, if that was your situation, let yourself sit with it, heal yourself, and then be okay with saying, you know what? I did the best I could, but it wasn't enough.
Right.
And I'm sorry. People don't know how much I'm sorry goes a long way. And you're not sorry for doing the abuse because you didn't inflict the abuse. But if the child feels like I was not protected by you, they don't need an explanation. It's their feeling.
Right.
I needed to be protected by you. And I didn't feel you protected me. I don't need you to say, well, I did. No, I just need, I'm sorry you're hurt. I did the best I could with the tools I had, but it wasn't enough. What can I do now? Right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Is it possible for some, and I think you kind of hit on this a little earlier, but I'm going to ask kind of specific question. Is it possible for an adult who was traumatized as a child, you know, to somehow feel, I don't know, they can see this child as reliving their own past. And sometimes, in order to distance themselves from their own past, they have to distance themselves emotionally from this new child, from their own child. And so therefore they can't take care of that child because they're not able to take care of their own self. You know, and so that to me can create some kind of a conundrum and say, well, you know, I know I'm supposed to be taking care of my daughter or my child, but when I'm doing that, I got to get in touch with the part of me that I'm trying to escape from, you know, and this child is reminding me of that. You know, the parents need to understand that they may be unwittingly going down that road, especially how they treat the child. And one of the ways that they may do this, you know, is to overcompensate the child. You know, give them everything they need, to make them feel like they're a good mother, you know. And but is that a realistic way to go about dealing with your own trauma, though? You know,
it's not. And what happens is when we don't have clear lenses, we ultimately can end up abandoning the child, and then that adds to the trauma.
Yes.
Because there's now emotional abandonment and there's the complex trauma, you know? And so it's being able to do our work, right? It's being able to, because when we don't know, we don't know. And so we're doing the best we can, and we're saying, okay, well, I'm just going to, like you said, I'm just going to give them this all the time because I didn't get that. So we're working from a space of what we didn't get. So I'm going to give them this all the time, and that will make it, because maybe that'll make them safer. And so we're working from these tools that, with a toolbox of tools that don't work, because I got these tools probably from another generation that had some trauma. And so when I understand that I'm functioning out of a space of detachment, is what I hear you saying, is that I'm seeing this child and I'm observing them, and I'm triggered by them, which could really cause even more problems, because if I'm triggered by them, they remind me of me, that I don't know how to function in the space of them, so I can't attach to them. So then I'm not nurturing them, and they're out here just surviving, you know?
Yeah. And I'm glad you said it, because then if the child feels abandoned, by if the child feels abandoned by the parent, I'm thinking that there's a possibility that for the child to say, I'm feeling abandoned, I don't want to be abandoned by my mom. So they go into this rescue fantasy. They try to rescue the parent from everything, and almost go to the point of parenting the parent. You know, doing for the parent, because they've already, like I said, been traumatized, and they don't want to be abandoned anymore. And they want, and when in rescuing, it's almost like trying to take their guilt away from them. But you know, and I think parents need, and you're right, parents, if they're going through that, they need to come in and see you, because they need to know that that is not a healthy thing for the child to do. Your child should not be rescuing you, because now the child has grown so fast through their, you know, on their growth and developmental continuum, that they're saying, I realize my mother is broken, or whoever the caretaker is broken. I need to go and rescue them at a cost to me.
Yes, exactly. Because then now they're parenting you,
Right.
And so then they feel guilty for no longer parenting you. And that's what I see a lot in my office, is that then the child is parenting the adult and has been parenting the adult since they've been a child. And then now they're realizing, as an adult, I'm having difficulty connecting in relationships with my children, with people in general, in my career, in my romantic. I don't understand how to do it. And they're not realizing a lot of it is associated with never really understanding the dynamics within relationships. And so then when I start working through that space of, okay, let's understand how this has shown up. Where do you remember it first starting to show up? And they start realizing that dynamic with the parent, that could get kind of edgy, because people have a difficult time understanding that I'm not demonizing my parent, because I'm dealing with the dynamics that impacted how I show up today.
Okay.
And so giving yourself permission to say, I no longer am willing to parent you, because what people don't also understand is that when you have your child in a position of parenting you, that's a form of emotional abuse. Because now who's parenting them?
Right, exactly.
You know?
You're right. You know, it's to me, one author calls that parental unavailability. The parent is no longer available because the parent is now stuck in their own trauma at whatever age. But let me ask you this here. A person who has been, say, sexually abused, traumatized, it might impact their ease with which they have, appropriate sexual relationship with their their spouses or whoever down the road. Now, when they're in this very deep relationship, very meaningful relationship, is it important, or how important is it that the person who has been abused, sit down and talk with this person so that they can understand any fluctuating in their ability or willingness or ease with which they are willing to have sex in their marriage or whatever? Is it important? Because that is a huge piece. Because if the other person don't understand that, they might now begin to abuse the person as an adult, not understanding that the reason they're behaving that way, because they're still working through. So how important is it that they kind of talk to about that?
It's extremely important. That's one of the biggest things that I work in the space of too, is understanding the safety of having that conversation. Because oftentimes when people have experienced a level of abuse, sometimes I don't have any numbers and statistics, but before getting into a safe relationship, they may have been experiencing a lot of detached sexual experiences, but not really know it. So then you get into a safe space with someone who is intimately connecting with you, and it's almost like you now have to shift the body and the memory of the body to understand that this is a safe space. And so if the adrenaline rush is no longer there that came with the detached space of sex, because whatever that was connected to, whether it was connected to power, whether it was just connected to pleasure, whatever it was connected to, it shifts in this intimate relationship, because now this is consistent. It doesn't have the emotional spaces. You're trying to show up emotionally in a way you probably have not necessarily known how. And so that sexual drive can either go back down, it can go down, it can become non-existent, or your body can lock up because now this is safe, but I don't even know what safe means. And so then the partner then is trying to figure out, well, we were doing all of this before, especially if they were sexually active prior. We were doing all this before. How did all of this shift? Well, now it's become too safe to a degree. And I don't know how to function in the space of all of this emotion. What is this, right? My body does not know how to connect to this. And so it's being able to have the conversation of what's happening because oftentimes what happens is the body is becoming triggered because now it's finally calmed down. It's not out here surviving in these ways that it survived before. And so it's calming down and it's realizing, wait a minute, my body is responding when you touch me like this to something else. And I don't really know why I don't like it.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I'm learning that I don't like it, but I know it's not you. So that child confusion, right? So now I'm back in my childlike space because I want to please you. But if I can't please you and you become upset, then we're back to the abuse, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're upset with me and I can't do right and I did something bad. So then the person becomes more and more detached, right? And so helping them to understand that the body responds. And so that's a big part of understanding sexual abuse, is that when your body has been touched, the body remembers and it responds. So if you're in an intimate relationship and someone touches you in the same way,
Right.
and you're trying to figure out, why did I get nauseous, or why did I lock up, or like women experience vaginismus? Why does not my body not lubricate itself? Why am I so why is my pelvic floor so tight? Why am I having all these issues? I'm experiencing pain, right? And so then when I'm understanding these things, I'm able to work through them and say, okay, my body keeps score. And so helping them to have conversation first, because it's difficult to have conversation with your partner if you don't understand, because it's a very vulnerable space. And so what I work with women to understand is, let's first learn about your body, because you learned about your body from someone touching it. Oftentimes women who've been abused, nobody's ever told them about their body. You didn't know anything, whether it's when you were sexually abused as a child or raped when you're older. A lot of education is not there. So first is teaching them about this body, what happens with the body, why the body responds the way it does when it's touched. So then that way you're not feeling like I'm a bad person because my body responded to this person when they touched me. And that's a big part about, when they're having orgasm or pleasure or different things, because now there's a negative association with that experience. And I'm not able to connect to you. And then that partner is feeling rejected and starting to feel bad about themselves because, did I do something wrong? Why are they not connecting to me?
Yeah.
And so it's helping them understand that your body is responding to the trauma, but it doesn't have to always respond that way if we start learning about what is happening with the body, so that we can help it to connect in a different way and develop a different processing.
Okay. Now, is this word that I'm going to use now, does it have a place in this, in terms of the victim and the partner? This word called acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that fit in all of this?
The victim and the partner. Acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance that this is a journey and that it's not going to happen overnight. And it's understanding the partner, understanding that you don't have to be abandoned just because your partner's experiencing this. And you want to be getting your help in the space of it too. Right? And so the acceptance is understanding that, because if there is no acceptance from the partner, because of the rejection or whatever they experience it as, they'll say things, mean things, and that's not the intention. But that's what happens. We're human. And so, especially if both of you all are responding in whatever way, things can happen that can just go crazy, and not realizing in that space when the partner, let's say, is feeling rejected and feeling like, oh, you just don't want me, or you want somebody else, or you used to be out there in the streets, or whatever can happen. They're not realizing in the midst of their pain, and it's showing up in those ways, then that partner is going deeper into their shell, and they're getting further and further away. And it often feels like denial, and it's not denial, it's protection. And so the acceptance of, my partner is dealing with some things. Now, does it mean that I have to be abused as a result? Does it mean that I have to experience all this as a result? No, but it does mean that this is a journey, and we've got to make some rules so that we don't continue to traumatize each other while we're trying to grow and understand how to connect. Because the beautiful thing is that it is possible, and it will happen if there's commitment in the process of understanding, okay, I've got to learn this body so we can get to a different space.
Right. One last question. This I want to shift quickly to the church part. What happens, and it has happened, when a woman is walking down the road, at the park, wherever, the store, wherever, and she was about 6 when it happened. And she sees this pretty little 6-year-old girl in the store with her mother. And all of a sudden, it brings it back to live memory, because the 6-year-old girl that she's seeing walking in front of her now, it's no longer a picture that you were asking her for. It is a live replica of her. And Can that kind of have an
It gets
impact?
fired up. The body gets fired up. I like to see it as fire. If you can think in a thermometer, you know how thermometers have what, yellow, blue, whatever, right?
Yeah.
The body goes to the top, right? Especially if you are, for me, I'll use myself as an example. If I'm at church and I see something that is a younger child and I see them around somebody that is suspect.
Oh my.
Or I feel it's suspect, or I know it's suspect.
Right.
And I automatically want to protect. I become afraid and anxiety and I get in the space of protecting. It's so funny to say that because when I think back to growing up, I've always been a protector. And I realized just now after going through the Sexual Trauma Awareness Month and different things, it's funny how you continue to heal as you help people, right?
Right.
And I realized that probably impacted a lot of what I do now too, because I had to walk around and orbit in a space where this person continued to orbit throughout my life. And I saw that somebody could be hurt by him and even knew that other people were, right? And so had to be in this space of constant hypervigilance. And that's when we understand how the body just holds on to this trauma for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And you're re-traumatized in that space of the religious trauma. Because if this person is orbiting the space and we know this person is causing harm, but they're still here, and I'm supposed to trust this environment, this space that is supposed to be safe, but is not actually safe because these spaces, it doesn't feel to me that action is not taken in the space of it. Right.
Wow.
And so to answer your question, the charge comes, right? Because there's a charge in a few places. There's an anger, there's a hypervigilance, there's a want to protect, there's a helplessness. Because you're looking and you can see something, but can you actually interject? Because people don't necessarily want interject. They don't necessarily want to see, right? And so it makes it a difficult space to function in, and you kind of have to work through that space, and be able to say, okay, well, or you go back to that space that you told your inner child, I'm not her anymore.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. That's not me. It feels like it right now. It feels really close to it. But it's almost like grounding. And that's why I love grounding work and meditation and resourcing, because it's almost putting your feet on the ground or grabbing some cold water or tea and putting your hand on it so that warmth goes through your hand and you feel yourself, okay, I'm here, I'm present. That's not my situation. That's not where I am. I'm here now and I'm safe. Mm-hmm. And I have the ability to protect others and to protect me, but I don't have to always be in the space of protecting others either.
Wow. Listen, I know we've been going at this now for quite a bit, but I want to kind of just close it out with focusing for a little bit on the deacon at the church. Mm-hmm. But it was a deacon at the church, so I wonder how safe, what can churches do when they know? What can church leaders do when and I'm not talking about, I don't know to what degree they go, but what can they do to protect young, vulnerable people and create a feeling of safety for parents who want their children to have a life of normalcy, as opposed to living in what I call a self-imposed prison. I'm in there locking myself in. A self-imposed prison ain't got no windows, no doors, no roof, no handles, no prison guard. No, you're the only one in there.
Oh, yeah.
But it's your safe place. Mm-hmm. What can churches do, or the spiritual community do to help, either before, during, or after, mm-hmm. to help to reconstitute people and help parents and caregivers through this?
They can stop hiding from the conversation.
Okay.
I think that's the big part that the churches need to do. Stop hiding from the conversation. It's here. It's real. It's happening. 1 in 4 women are impacted by sexual assault, 1 in 6 men. So if we look at the statistics and we look at the congregation, we got to stop hiding from the conversation. I think people get so afraid to be in the conversation that they don't understand they're re-traumatizing their congregation. They're so afraid to act, to stop hiding, act, protect. And I think there needs to be training on what protection means. I think oftentimes we spiritualize discipline. And so instead of disciplining these people who are causing harm, we say, oh, God is working on them. They're going through this thing and he's going to bring them out. But they're traumatizing people. They're hurting people. And so if we would start having the conversation, because the thing about Sexual Assault Awareness Month is the conversation. When we're talking, it makes people uncomfortable. And you have to be uncomfortable to make a change. But if you sit in the space of comfort and acting like this can't be happening in our environment, when statistics show that there's no way that it can be. If we act and we have the conversation and we start making things visible, this is how you get help with sexual assault. This is something that has happened, acknowledging. This is something that has happened in our religious sector. And we are sorry that we have not known. That goes back to the acknowledging and apologizing. We are sorry that we have not acted and have not known how to protect you, but we're willing to learn. Humility.
Right.
And so I think that those are the things that and I could go on about that.
listen, Juliet. I know you can, but maybe one last question here. Have you thought about, or have you done, or can you do things for the church at large, or for sectors of the church? You know, training of leadership in the church to say, listen, these are some of the realities, and we don't need to spiritualize it away. You know, you cannot pray away a sexual abuse act that has happened, but you can pray through how you can work it through. And then they can get you to come on in and say, listen, folks, these are the realities. This is where we are. This is how we got here. This is where we need to go. Mm-hmm. Can you do things like that for churches? Do training and all this other stuff? And I'm not going to ask you if you think it's important. I know you know it's important. Mm-hmm. So how do you get to that? And maybe when we close that, I definitely want you to give people your contact, because you've given us some rich information here tonight. Okay. You really have. I'm not just blowing you up. I'm saying you have given some really, really important things about this. And I think it's something that however, the treatment community need to really, get you a brochure, do something, and go to churches and go to the leaders of the churches, go to the, a lot of churches have women's department and women's group. Please.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I am open and willing. I'm willing where people want the service, right?
Yeah.
For it and I'll be honest, it's difficult because there's a lot of protective behaviors that show up in the spaces of our churches. And so I would teach, but I want to teach people who want to be taught. And I think that that's the greatest challenge that I run into, but I'm willing, more than willing, because I think that the more we teach, even if there is protective behavior, that's okay, because it's an uncomfortable conversation.
Who's protecting who? Who's protecting who? We say protective behavior. Who's protecting who?
Protecting ourselves and our pride, and our
that's it.
And I try not to use the word resistant anymore. And so, I think it's protecting ourselves, our pride, our religion, our name, and not wanting to deal with the realities of the pain we're causing in that space of protection of what it will make us look like to admit how much trauma has been happening in our space. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. But didn't the Bible say that we should protect the widows and the fatherless and all this? That's what the Bible said.
Right.
So how can we protect them if we spiritualize it away?
Exactly.
And this is where someone like you come in and say, wait a second. We gotta get in the weeds. We gotta get down here, because if we don't, then what might happen here is that there might be some abnormalities that show up in the lives of the adult lives of many of our children. And many people might become disenchanted with the church because the church said and did nothing.
Yes, that part. That's the part. That's the biggest part. And we got so much pain out here, as a result of that. And so, yes, the answer is yes, I am willing. I was speaking about this the other day. I have to continue to pray in the space of it, because I have to be honest, it's triggering for me when there is resistance, because it reminds me of the lack of protection I experience. Okay. And that's what people don't realize is hurtful in the space. And it's almost like if we could just not take it in the emotional space and look at the numbers. If we could just look at the numbers and look at the people in our congregation and really understand the numbers, look at the statistics. So then we're not so busy trying to protect other people and protect our image, but we're saying, hey, this is a thing, regardless of if it's here, it's happening in the world at large. So then we can take it out of the personal space and say, what will I do? Because you're right, it does impact. If I'm not safe in the space of what I'm understanding is God, the ultimate authority. And people don't understand how if you don't work through your stuff, you have a problem with God. Ooh. And then we're not able to help people understand that it's okay when you have that problem. God gets it. But we can help you to work through it. But we spiritualize that too. You can't have a problem with God. But if a man abused me and God represents man, then how do I work through that? And so these are the levels that I think we oftentimes don't understand. And if we spiritualize it, we re-traumatize.
Yeah.
And then we keep people, because we talk about forgiveness and you should forgive. Well, no, let's heal first before we get to forgiveness. Let's talk about what happened so I can acknowledge what happened. I can understand what happened. I can be in the space of this trauma I experienced. And then I can understand what forgiveness is and see if I want to go in that direction.
Wow. Juliet, you blew this thing up tonight. You listen. First off, I just want to thank you for being on with me tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Francis.
But I want to thank you for something more than that. I want to thank you for being so vulnerable that you would peel off layers of your own heal. And it's not heal, it is healing. It is ongoing. And so for you to come and to do that tonight, hats off to you. I mean, putting my hair off to you, whatever, because it is. That was not something that's easy, because a lot of women who have not come to the place where you're at, they would not even talk about this thing. And they're the women that are in their self-imposed prison, not knowing that they're in prison. They need to do a prison break. And I think you're the one that can help them to do a prison break. I really do think so. I want you to do that. I really want you to do that. Whether we do it again like this, I'd love to, but somehow we got to do that. Release these women so that they can go out and potentialize their best.
Yes, that part.
You know what I'm saying here? As opposed to thinking that they are the product of a behavior. Oh,
yeah. And that part. And I wanted that part because, and I saw Miss Francis put on there, do you ever heal? Yes, you do heal. I feel like I don't want people to feel like you don't heal from sex trauma. You do heal. You do heal. And completely is a definitive word, because I think we're always in process, right? We're always in process, whether it's trauma or just growing. We're in process. But I do think that the beautiful part is you do heal if you are willing to heal. Yeah. Because we can get accustomed to being in this space of our trauma, and we look through trauma lenses, and that's been our space of comfort. But you do heal. And so I am right there with you, Dr. Francis, in that there is another side to this. There is a prison break to this. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know that in my journey of healing, the freedom that I have found in my life and am continuing to find is the most amazing thing that I've experienced ever. Oh. And so when I talk to my clients, I'm not just speaking from this book. I'm speaking from experience and understanding of the continual process of healing. If you stick in there, it's not overnight, but it's freedom that comes in the journey. It doesn't mean it's going to take forever to get there, but as I'm going through different parts of it, the freedom, it's like different moments of freedom. So I do want people to know that.
Yeah. I know I got to stop, but I got to say that, when I was in high school, I was in track and field. I ran cross country. Everybody starts the race at the same time.
Yeah.
I have yet to see everybody finish the race at the same time.
Yeah.
In other words, the journey is so different and so unique, and we come to various crossroads, and we carry various levels of weight and difficulties and problems. Some slow us down. Another day we may be able to go faster. And another day when we can go faster. And as sisters, you reach out and hug somebody and say, I will help you along the journey because I see you're struggling today. And that sister will pick up her hand and say, yes, I got something to help me through this. And that's what I see you doing. I see you like the person going to say, sister, let me just put your arm around her shoulder. Wait, sister, let me just help you along this journey here. That's what we need. Mm-hmm. It really is. And and I know you got a whole lot going on in your life right now, but for you to be able to, do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do that.
Mm-hmm.
Get these women out so they can become the best lawyers and the best doctors and the best oceanographers and the best scientists and the best preachers. And, you understand what I'm saying here?
Yes.
All of these things that they have the potential, the capacity to be, but they're being held back because they're going through this self-absorption of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So can you do that?
I can.
You can. Thank you so much. Listen, Juliet, thank you so much for coming in. I could talk to you on that really good because there's a whole wealth of knowledge. People, I just want to thank you for just tuning in with Juliet and me this evening. She is a gem. She's going to give you the information that you need to contact her. And Juliet, if you have people that needs to follow you, give them exactly what you need to give them so that they can follow you and do, just go right ahead.
Okay. So if you would like to contact me for therapy, I am licensed in the state of Alabama right now. So I'm not licensed outside of the state of Alabama. But I do have group therapy program that's going to be starting specifically for sex trauma on June 12th. You can go on my website and get information about it. Thank you. It's www.j2nb.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram at Juliet WJ2NB. I try to post information there and resources. I'm working towards being able to provide virtual groups for people who are out of the state of Alabama, but those have not begun yet. I'm working specifically under licensing right now. So I do provide individual therapy and group therapy. Support group is once a month. The program starts June 12th. It's a 10-week program, 3-part series. It's an amazing program. It's healing all up and through that. So you can contact me in these spaces. My telephone number is on the website. You can message me on Facebook or Instagram, Journey to New Beginnings Counseling Services. And I can get you the resources you need.
Yes. And can you do one other thing for me, Juliet? Mm-hmm. You mentioned something way at the top of the program. You were going to do a PhD. Now you need to get that word out of there. I'm looking to.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I hear you.
You hear me?
Yes.
It's not enough that you hear me, but
I'm with you. I'm going to move forward in that. Yes.
Listen. Let me know when you start, okay? Because I want to be a champion to just keep pushing you along and help you and do whatever I can, okay?
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Folks, It's been my pleasure to speak with Juliet. She's a wonderful person. You saw that for yourself. We have a lot of people who tuned in tonight. Oh, we got good numbers who tuned in tonight. Listen, I want you to like this stuff. Okay. I want you to follow me and follow Juliet to just inundate her with information, questions, whatever it is. I want you to share and subscribe, to this, the Shake Up, and anything else that I bring on here, anybody else I bring on. I want you to just inundate them with info because they have so much to give to you, okay, in terms of your healing. So thank you. So it's hey, I'm out of here. This is Kitson Dr. Francis from Love and Marriage Huntsville, aka Dr. Kit. See you next week with the Dr. Kit Shakeup, on the Dr. Kit Shakeup. Okay. And again, if you want to be a part of this program, this show, just email my team at drkitspeaks@gmail.com, and they will get you on. You don't have to be on camera. You can be off camera, but the information you provide, remember this, it will be so important. It will be healing to you and to someone else, okay? Continue with the Shake Up. See you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.